What if I were to tell you that there's a version of AI as powerful as ChatGPT or Claude that you could run on your computer at basically no cost whatsoever? You need no internet, no subscription, it's absolutely free, and almost nobody is talking about this. I follow a lot of these AI channels and I see what they upload every single day. And one thing I'll tell you right now is many have not caught up to what's been happening in open sourced AI. And what I mean with that is that many of these accounts have not been posting about the fact that these open sourced models, the ones that you could run for yourself with no subscription, no data sending around, have actually caught up to some of the most famous paid models. And what I mean, if you take a look at some of my most recent videos talking about Kimi and a few other ones, you'll see that those models right now in benchmarks, they've caught up to Claude and ChatGPT and etc. Now, the nice thing is, if you use one of those, no API keys, no sending your data to some random ass servers, and well, there's a lot of benefits. Let me give you a little overview of the 6 most important models that matter right now, starting with Kimi K2.6. This is the model I made a video about just a few days ago that did pretty well, made by Moonshot AI. 1 trillion parameters, mixture of experts model, open weights, meaning you can get everything for yourself, and it basically matches Claude Opus right now on coding benchmarks. And officially right now it runs these agent swarms better than anything closed. Then we've got DeepSeek v3.2, very fast, extremely cheap, and well, for basically most tasks is very comparable to GPT level 5. We've got the recently extremely popular Alibaba Qwen 3.5, right now number 1 on Hugging Face, up to 72 billion parameters and absolutely fully free, fully open source, multilingual and just really easy tools. We've got Gemma 4, right now I'd say most popular out of all of them. Whenever I talk to people about running their own local models, it is mostly Gemma 4 right now as we speak. This comes from Google. It is only 26 billion parameters, only 14 gigabytes worth of space. And the nice thing is it runs at about 85 tokens per second on a normal laptop. So it's like your MacBook, your gaming PC. It's not a server. It's got a proper Apache license, meaning you can use it commercially with no strings. Now, it's not going to be as good as Kimi for some of the hardest tasks, but hey, you know, you're picking your poisons here. It's smart enough to do like 90% of what some of the other better ones are probably good for. Then, of course, we gotta put a little meta in there with Llama Scout 4. This one I'd say is most popular for its 10 million token context window. Absolutely crazy. Means you can put like an entire freaking database, an entire code base, or a book in it one shot. Pretty big still, totally at a 109 billion, but 17 billion active. And this one right now is most, I'm going to say, popular for like these third-party tools. And then an honorable mention is Mistral. Personally, never really messed around with that. I've seen it come by a few times. Just wanted to, have a little mention out there of all the different things that are possible that I've been hearing about. But yeah, 6 different options. All 6 of these absolutely extremely popular. And even though they all serve a slightly different purpose, you get it, right? These can all be downloaded, theoretically speaking, right? Size could be a differentiating factor, but theoretically speaking, all be downloaded and used without having to send your data off to random ass servers, because these are open source, meaning that for at least some of these, you have everything within your own freaking hands. No subscriptions, no API costs, no internet necessary, just you and an AI on a PC or on a server or whatever you've got running. Now, I have to give a quick little refresher about how the AIs that you usually interact with actually work. Because essentially what you're doing is you're typing in a little chat box, right? A little box right there, your question. It sends it over to Anthropic server somewhere or OpenAI server somewhere, and it comes back to your computer, right? In yet another little form or box. But realistically, this doesn't really take any sort of toll on your computer. No, essentially the giant model that lives on their servers from Anthropic or whatever is doing all the work. But if you were to be running it locally, well, things would be a little bit different, ladies and gentlemen. So here we go. Running it locally basically means it lives on your computer. So when you type a question, your computer does all the thinking, and there's no round tripping to anybody's servers as the data never leaves your network. And like I said, no rate limits, no subscriptions, just you and your data. Now, the trade-off, well, there's the thing. It used to be quality. It used to be that if you run your own local models, you wouldn't get at all close to the quality that you get from the closed-off models. These local models used to be significantly dumber, and well, they used to, for most people, also be too difficult to get into. But with the recent boom of AI, a lot of these websites have now made the getting of one of these models on your computer extremely simple. They've gotten a lot more efficient. More importantly, since the big 2026, some of these models have caught up, and it's really for a lot of people hard to say whether or not a local one running on your computer or one that's actually hosted properly like ChatGPT or Claude is actually better. And again, both of them have their merits. The nice thing with the Claude or ChatGPT is the interface is really smooth and you know exactly what you're going to get, right? The nice thing about local is, theoretically speaking, it's even more reliable because you have no rate limits, no filters, nothing, because you can basically work around that all the way through, right? The only limitation is your own machine. And I've been thinking about that for a while. What exactly do you need? There's 3 different tiers when it comes to this hardware, because you do need to sit down for a little second and think, hey, you know what? I want something to run, but which model do I pick? How big a model can I actually run? What type of model will my hardware allow me to use? So here's a little bit of a rundown. You can take a screenshot of it if you want to. So in tier 1, almost any modern computer, hardware you probably already own. An example, this is like a MacBook Air 16 gigabyte, a pretty decent gaming PC or a laptop from the last couple of years. You could probably run Gemma 4 or some smaller Quen variants or some compressed Llama models. And this is what I've talked about in my previous video. Right here where I went over GLM, that there's a ton of different versions that you can go for, some significantly bigger than the other. But that's also what then this little compressed model means here. You're just not getting yourself access to the full thing. Now, if you've got a pretty beefy ass computer, right? You got a proper gaming rig, you've got a couple $1,000s in there. You've got a MacBook Pro, a proper one, a new one, a pretty good graphics card. You're probably still not going to be able to run the full Kimi K 2.6, but a compressed version, one of them could probably work. DeepSeek V3.2 or near frontier quality. What this last part basically means is that you're not going to be able to run the best of the best, but you're pretty much getting close to it. Again, I have to also remind you that just because you're able to run one of these models doesn't necessarily mean it's optimal, because, for example, a DeepSeek here, it's going to be running fine, but depending, of course, on how good your hardware is, it might not be that fast. Because remember what I just talked to you guys about, that there's still a difference here between all of these. And the difference between sending it over a server versus having it locally is your machine is going to be doing the work, right? So you want a freaking good machine, or you're going to have to be prepared to wait a little bit longer. Anyway, then we're heading over into tier 3. You've got a proper multi-GPU rig or a freaking Mac Studio, a beefy one, one of those juicy beefed up ones. Lots of RAM, lots of RAM. You can probably run a full-size Frontier model, one of the proper ones. You're not really compromising on quality, meaning right now versus one of these hosted ones like a Claude or OpenAI, you're not really losing much anymore because, well, you're not compressing it down as much anymore. You're not dumbing it down just to be able to run. If you're seriously doing some very hard coding projects and you really don't want to notice the difference, you're going to also have to put up some pretty good hardware. It's just the freaking truth, all right? And the more parameters it's got, the faster you want it to be, the better your hardware will also have to be. And so I'm being fully honest with you when I say that you'll be able to run some sort of models even on an old laptop. And here's the thing, as these models get better, their optimization will get better to a certain extent, where the amount of RAM it's going to use at a time will probably get significantly more efficient. But again, that's a time thing. Just because you're able to get some of these models and run them doesn't mean it's actually the best thing for you to do. But here's the thing, I want you to know you have the option. I want you to know that there's an option for you to go ahead and keep the data with yourself, to not always have to pay a subscription and to not always be rate limited. And I want a lot of people to know that really some of these models you can actually run on just some of your older devices. I got a lot of comments recently about people saying, oh, you really can't. What are you talking about? You need some crazy institutional grade hardware. And again, that depends on what type of model you're running. It is ridiculous to say that you can't run these things on older devices. You just will not be able to run them as well, and probably not the newest and the biggest. But there's a lot of things you can. And that's the thing a lot of these channels right now are not mentioning, that we've come a long way from 2024. Now, I think you've already got it from me just explaining it throughout this video, but if you're really looking for any reason still as to why you would want to use this, no subscription, you keep the data to yourself, you can do it offline. And that's actually a really big thing for me, the fact that you will always have access to it. Nobody's going to be able to take it away from you. It doesn't change. And then a little side note, I wrote it down here real quick. So the 5 main reasons are privacy, offline capacity, no rate limits, cost, and control. Yeah, it's basically what I just said, right? But I just wanted to quickly make sure I had my summary set. I think another fun comparison would be to see if you're using Claude to the freaking max, right? And you're basically spending a couple $1,000s on it a month, perhaps, or let's say high hundreds. Maybe you're spending $300-400 on it. I kind of wonder where it's going to make more sense to invest, for example, in a beefed up Mac Studio or a proper multi-GPU rig over just spending so much on Claude or GPT or whatever. I kind of wonder where the threshold will be. How many hundreds of dollars a month would it be where it makes sense to get the hardware and run local models instead, based on the idea you also have these other benefits. But this was all cool and all. I think it was worthy of a proper discussion and a proper mention. But there are some drawbacks that I obviously have to also address. One is the setup. It's not necessarily that easy yet. There's a lot of websites that make it significantly easier nowadays. I mean, there's a big guide on Hugging Face we talked about before in a video, but the long story short is you're still going to have to learn to use it. There's still a little bit of a learning curve attached to it, and you're going to have to spend some time to learn that. If you hate messing around, you don't like tweaking settings and all that stuff, this is not something for you just quite yet. Point number 2 is unless you've got absolute crazy institutional grade hardware, you're not gonna get to the same level yet. All right, you're probably gonna get 90% there, and for most people that's good enough. But if you want the best of the best, like the absolute best of what they've got to offer, like I said, you're most likely going to be seeing some sort of bottlenecking. I mean, any of the models I've talked about here before, they're good and they come close to GPT or Opus here. But I don't think there's really anybody out there that would say that these open source models are actually beating their own flows in Codex or in Opus. I'm just going to be honest with you here. And so for that reason, if you need the best of the best of the best, stick to whatever is hottest at the time. Right now, people are all flooding to GPT. Most likely soon, again, it's yet another one. And another very big factor would be interoperability. If you want to go and do all these different like tool calls and whatnot, on your own local models, it's just a lot of configuring. Again, you get used to this. It's pretty easy once you start to get the hang of it, but it's a barrier to entry to do a web search, for example. How exactly do you do that on your local model? How exactly do you insert all these things? Again, takes one configuration and afterwards you can do it forever, but you need to configure it. Whereas with Claude or whatever, it's already baked in. It's super simple. Now, even if you're never going to install any of these local models because you're watching this on your phone, you have no laptop, and you have no interest in actually doing any of this, I still think it's important to note that these options exist. You realize that you don't need to have a subscription to a ChatGPT or to an or to an Anthropic. You don't need to. It's a choice, and I think that matters. Now, if you want some different websites, you can start this out at. One of the ones you may want to just give a little look is LM Studio, very popular recently. Again, I have 100 subscribers. This is not a sponsorship, no paid promotion or anything like that. My videos average 100 or a few hundred views, so don't worry about that. I'm just showing you whatever's most used. LM Studio is extremely popular. If you want to stay on the smaller side, the more reasonable side, stay for Gemma or for some smaller Quen version. For example, if you click it, you'll see for Gemma, the smallest you can run is actually only 4 gigabytes of RAM required. But if you, for example, go to an earlier GLM or GLM 4.7, for example, here, you can see 16 will be your minimum that you need. It's just to paint a picture here. Quen also, the smallest you can actually go for is, for example, just 2 gigabytes of RAM. Pretty freaking small. I think most laptops will have that. Or if you prefer command line, you've got Ollama, another one, very popular. Both LM Studio and Ollama have some free options available for you to try it out. And if you really want me to make a guide on how to set up one of these local models for all of you guys to just simply follow, hey, press that like button and let me know in the comment section down below. And maybe we'll get to it tomorrow. You know, I mean, I have time. It's just depending on whether or not people want to see it. And if so, which one? Which one would you want me to set up? Remember, for a lot of you guys, it can be worth considering how much or at which point it is worth it. Because if you're spending a lot of money on Claude and all these things, hey, it may be worth spending some money on some hardware once, so you don't have to keep up with these subscriptions for a long time, but that requires some foresight. It requires you to think of the near future and how long you'll be having these subscriptions for and how much better the models are. But anyway, I'll leave that in your own hands. Just wanted to quickly make a video on the fact that it's possible. It's pretty freaking cool, and that was about it.